All right, delighted to be here with so many people that I work closely with and I know well, and some my dad's here, a very old friend, stress on the old, here as well. Jesse, thank you. I wanted to thank JLL, BGO, and Hello Art, the people that are curating the space, for inviting me to share about my work, and to all of you for carving time out of what I know is a super busy work life to come down and hear about this. I have about 15 minutes to go through, so stick around. If you have to leave, you can leave, no worries. If you have questions, we can talk at the end. Wanted to explain a little bit about this work, a little bit about me, a little bit about this work, what I learned from it, and that's basically what we're going to be doing. So, by way of introduction, share a bit about myself. As I think you all know, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of .go. I've been doing that for 6 years. And that was basically when I stopped making art. When I joined .go about 6 years ago, I just did not have time. So this work is actually older. But I do consider myself a fine artist as well. And I started creating art when I moved to Eastern Europe. I moved to Prague in 2001. And I was in a different country, and everything was sort of unique and interesting, and it inspired me. So I worked on a few different projects when I was living there from 2001 to 2004. While working there, I got to travel 10 different countries, 200 cities and towns, documenting former Jewish sites across Eastern Europe. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. They came from there. That was very important to me. This is a photo of I took in a Tokai, Hungary, from the rose window of an abandoned synagogue. I shot the church of the town from from the top floor of that. I moved back to New York, and I have there's a whole series. I've exhibited it. You can see it on my website. I'll share that link at the end. When I moved back to New York in 2004, I wanted to go back to Eastern Europe. So for the next 6 years, I went back for a week a year for the next 6 years for the Jewish High Holy Days. My dad took me the first time, went back another 5 times to document the largest largest Jewish pilgrimage to any point outside of Israel. 25,000, 35,000, many thousands of Jews go to this small town in the Ukraine where Rabbi Nachman is buried, and they pray at his tomb. It's a pretty incredible sight. It's best described as Mount Sinai meets Woodstock. It's like equal parts spiritual and sort of like wild, communal, festive stuff. I had a solo museum show for this back in 2001 in Philadelphia. I also worked, that was documentary work. I also created abstract work. So in 2001, I started shooting a series that I called Shots Absinthe Photography. I created a filter out of a bottle of absinthe. Absinthe is a spirit, a liquor that is supposed to be hallucinogenic. It's not. It just tastes like crap, and it's very intense. But it's supposed to distort vision, so I created this filter. I put it in front of my camera, and this is what I get in camera on site. So I've taken this around the world with me. This is a shot I did in Chichen Itza, Mexico, Leaning Tower of Pisa. These images are not retouched. This is literally what I get in camera. Temple of Heaven in Beijing. One of the things I liked about this series is that I can shoot something that has been shot an infinite number of times and create something unique, and it's very quick. So that's my shot series. I'm also fascinated with advertising, and I'll get into that in a bit. In 2002, I started creating a series that I called AdInfinitum, and that's what you see on the walls here, sort of an evolution of that series. So AdInfinitum means it's Latin for to infinity. And to me, these images reflect the infinite nature of advertising. Built into it is also a commentary on capitalism, consumerism, and culture, which are also infinite. This series uses recontextualized advertising as a means of creative expression, and we're going to be talking about that for the rest of our time here. So a little more context. I like this quote: "We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are." So, reflecting on that and like, who am I and how did I come to this work? A couple of things you should know. I was raised in an Orthodox Jewish home. I studied art history in college. I got a job in advertising when I graduated. I moved to Europe in 2001, as I mentioned, and started working on my photography there. When I came to the US, I continued working in advertising. I've done that for about 3 decades now, in some advertising marketing in some form. And these experiences and others inform my perspective. So that's why I'm fixated and fascinated on advertising. So back to the beginning. I'm living in Prague. It's 2002. I'm taking my son to kindergarten every morning, and I'm walking through this tunnel, which is encrusted with advertising, layer upon layer upon layer of advertising. People went by and ripped it. No one bothered to clean it up, and it was a bit of a mess. As I continued to walk by it, I'd noticed some interesting patterns in there. And again, I have this advertising fixation because it's what I do professionally, or was doing at the time. And sort of the visual chaos appealed to me. So I had a camera with me. I started taking pictures. This is the first photo I shot. This is the second photo I shot. At the time, I was working on that Absinthe series and this larger, broader documentary of Jewish sites. So this wasn't a main focus of mine, but as I'd walk and I'd pass walls, I'd just sort of snap pictures of it and just continued building this series out. So I shot 3 types of images, things I found graphically appealing, interesting juxtapositions. I like this, there's something, the dissonance between the old and the new here, the scale, like sort of that very small, sort of wide shot of a concert hall and this giant guitar player. We'll come back to this one in a minute. I also liked eyes. The notion of like advertising staring back at you sort of really appealed to me. So this was a documentary series. I was not actually, I didn't touch the walls deliberately. I'd see a wall, I'd get my camera out, I'd frame it, and I'd shoot what I shot. I liked the purity of that. It felt like I wasn't cheating, I wasn't manipulating it in any way. I didn't name them, they had numbers. It was a serial, I think I shot like 321 of them while I was over there. I traveled and I shot when I traveled as well. I had this ghetto kid with a puffin, a rabbi with punk rock on his mind. When I returned to New York in 2004, I had over 300 images in the series, and I found myself working a very intense advertising job a few blocks north on 3rd Avenue. I'm living here. In New York, there are no decayed walls of advertising posters. They're kind of very hard to find. The city has ordinances to keep them clean, so I didn't really pass anything that inspired me. And from 2004 to 2009, I shot exactly 2 images in this series. I shot this one in Israel. I shot this one in the Ukraine when I was there for this documentary. I was in Odessa traveling to that pilgrimage, and I shot it. In 2009, I did a couple of things while, again, had this advertising job, but I connected with a collective of artists, and I started going to galleries in Dumbo and meeting with artists there, sort of like 2 different groups of artists, and talking to them about my work. These affiliations, these conversations got me interested in submitting my work for shows. So one of the groups put out an art call for the show called Dura Europos. Dura Europos is a synagogue site in Syria that was built in, I think, 244 AD. It was rediscovered in 1932. It has a fresco cycle of the Old Testament, and they said, we're looking for art that mirrors this, and if you have something, send it. So I wanted to show my work. I didn't know that I had anything. When I researched the cycle, I found this. It's Moses leading the Jews out of Egypt, and you have the Egyptians over there, and they're drowning. And when I saw this, I'm like, I know what I'm going to submit. I have this. And again, I shot. This is many years after I shot that image. That image was this image was image 317, but it always had a bit of an Exodus feel to me. So I had to crop it square, which I did, and you can kind of look at them side by side. Again, that image is from probably like, I don't know, 300 years after Jesus was around, and this was shot much more recently, but they have compositional similarities that are pretty obvious. You have the guys in the robe on the right, and you have Egypt on the left, or maybe vice versa. I don't know my right from my left. So good. But what I liked about this when I shot it was this is actually from a famous fresco, Raphael, A School of Athens. It's Plato and Aristotle. I like the juxtaposition next to the Sphinx, sort of my art history geekiness of these 2 things that didn't belong together. But through the lens of this show, I was able to give it a different meaning. I showed it in that show. I showed it in the Long Island Had a Biennial, who knew? There's a museum out there, so in 2010 I showed it there. That got me interested in this series again. And I decided to submit to the Dumbo Arts Festival. So for the Dumbo Arts Festival, again, this is back in 2010, I took a bunch of my work that I shot in Prague, these numbered things. I did this in Photoshop. I said, I'm going to do AdInfinitum. I'm going to do it on the street. And it's the afterlife of advertising. That was the idea. That was as far as I'd gotten with it. They accepted the proposal, which was really, really exciting. Then I had to make a show. So, and it was a pretty big deal, I felt, to be able to do this. So I wanted to do something better than this, but I didn't know what. They didn't give me 40 feet, they gave me 140 feet on a scaffold 30 feet up off the ground, which made installation sort of fun and dangerous and a little interesting. But I was trying to figure out how to do better with this series, and I was walking around the city, and I found a site on 9th Avenue in the 50s that actually was abandoned. It was a construction site. It had all this encrusted advertising on it. And I'm like, maybe I can come in and I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, I'm going to take a wall. I'm going to bring it back to my studio. I'm going to start tearing away at it. And I'm going to start making some new stuff. That was at night. When I went back the next morning, the thing I wanted to shoot had already been covered up. And actually, I went back with you, Jesse. You were with me. It's kind of crazy. Okay. So I met Jesse in the park, and we walked over there, and I knew there was something I wanted to shoot about here on the wall. So I ripped the poster away to shoot it, and then the dime dropped. I'm like, okay, I can do this. No one's telling me, I'm the only one that said I can't rip. I can rip, so I'm going to start ripping. So I started ripping, and that's kind of how I got to this. So I got to the concept of semiotic archaeology. What is that? Well, semiotics, for those of you that studied communications in college, it's the study of signs and symbols and their use in interpretation. So, what do words and images mean? Archaeology is the study of history, excavating, analysis, artifacts, physical remains. So I am digging through layers of word and meaning to create new meanings. So that is why it is semiotic archaeology. It's a literal description of my process. So just to give you a sense of what I did when I did it. Yes, I want to get out of this. And I want to go, here. There. So this was shot, I'd leave my office during lunch with a camera, and I'd go to find a construction site, and I would literally start ripping away at the wall and taking pictures as I went. This video goes on for a while, so I'm gonna jump forward, but I just tore, and as I uncovered things, I'd take pictures of them, and I'd continue tearing, and at some point I was talking to someone about it. I thought that the photos were the art, and because these are all photos, these are not paintings. And they're like, yeah, but you're making collage too. So I started actually taking small pieces back to my studio. Then I started coming in at night and taking 8-foot sections of wall back to my studio. So this is basically the technique. I'll show you where I wound up. Had some interesting conversations. People wanted to know what I was doing. I said I was cleaning the construction site. The police. I almost got arrested once for endangering the welfare of a minor because I had my 13-year-old son there, and I had a crowbar at a construction site trying to get a wall up. It worked out. No arrests. So let's see here. Back to this. Maybe this. No. Okay. And now we have to go. Sorry, let me jump. Okay, process. Okay, this is where I got. So this is an image that I shot there. Again, from that wall and digging. This is a commentary on professional sports. You can look at it later if you want. So I'm working on this site. I'm preparing for the Dumbo Arts Festival, and I shot a bunch of stuff. These are the early images from that series, and this was like in May, and the festival's in September, so the date was approaching, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. 9/11 was on my mind because it was, September was approaching. I had actually found 2 images that told some aspect of the story of 9/11. This was one of them, and this was the other one. And I was able to use these as an anchor and go back through my other work and create a series of 10 images called Cycles of Violence that told the story of 9/11 in this medium of torn advertising decollage. And that's what I showed at Dumbo. So created this nice poster. These are, I think the tagline, yesterday's ads are tomorrow's art, yesterday's wars are tomorrow's problem, the notion of this recursive cycle that we're in. But the 10 images, this is projection, impact. The next 3 actually tell the story of the towers coming down, chaos, carnage, collapse, aftermath, the death of liberty, invasion, insurgency, and sacrifice. So those are the pieces. It was up on this scaffold, like really, really high up off the ground. And it was a 3-day festival, but they didn't take the scaffold down for a year. So I got to go back a couple of times and watch the work kind of decay off, which was really kind of sweet. Framed by the Manhattan Bridge. So now that I'd created narrative, and I had this piece titled Exodus, I thought, yeah, I'd like to do an Old Testament series, right? Because I grew up studying that. Since I'm not adding anything, I'm literally only subtracting. It's really very random. So I figured it would take a very, very long time for me to get to enough pieces in this series to have a series. But it came together pretty quickly. So I found this. This reminded me of the creation of man, from the Sistine Chapel. I found this, which is actually on the wall over there. This tells the story of the flood, right? That's Noah's Ark. You have waters on the bottom, waters on the top, God's hand in the sky. And now that I had this framework and I started to find these pieces, I went back over all of the stuff that I had shot, like going back to 2002, right? I'm in like 2010, 2012 now. This piece from Odessa, which it had a number, right? This became the destruction of Sodom. You have the Sodomites, you have Lot's wife peering back, turning into a pillar of salt. There are a few other things in there that sort of like cue to that. Where's my bag? So I continued to work on it, and I wrote a statement of work. I'm not going to read it, but if you want to see like what I actually think about this particular series and what it means, you can pass that out. But I continued to work on this and refine it over the next couple of years. So this is the temptation of Eve. One of the things that I did, like the images themselves have this visual chaos to them. So I actually decided to hand tear or decal the edge of the prints. So that actually it gives the images the energy of, it finishes the images for me. It gives them the energy of what's actually going on in the frame itself. This is the expulsion from the garden. Adam and Eve on the left, God's hand in the center, pushing them out, telling them to evolve. I've shown this work. I've been fortunate to show it at art fairs, museums. It's in some permanent museum collections now. This is Cain killing Abel. Over the next few years, I actually found 50 images from this series, and I probably have like 50 or 52 total images here. This is the last one that I shot. I think it was in Israel. It was 7 years ago. This is a God confuses language. It's what happened in the Old Testament right after the Tower of Babel. This is punishment. Tower of Babel's over there. If you're wondering why I selected these 6 images in particular, most of the images in the series are actually horizontal, not vertical. So I was sort of limited to the vertical images. I had to figure out 6 vertical images that made sense. That's how I got there. There were other, any of you are welcome to come by my office and see. I probably have about 12 or 15 of them up. It's the beginning of the cycle. So I have different work up there. So after this, I kind of shifted my creative energy to a different project. I was collaging Wall Street Journal in a different way called Undercurrent. But I always wanted to make a book out of these images. So I did. At some point, I printed 160 linear feet of fine art paper, and I trimmed it, I scored it, I folded it, and joined it. Now I have a book that's 16 inches wide by 5 inches thick, and it's sitting in a lucite box in my house, and it makes me very happy when I see it. So I was able to complete that. I'm almost done here. My work looks at consumer culture through the lens of advertising, brands, and the media for reasons that should be obvious to all of you. And I've made a lot of things beyond beyond photography, and beyond the work that I've shown. I have a whole other side of my work. I've done sculptural work and mixed media work. This is, my website has a bunch of things there. This is one, probably made this in 2011, 2013, I don't know, somewhere back when I had time to make art. This is called Homo Logos. It's, it's the evolution of man. These are all logos that I took out of the Wall Street Journal. At the time, when I made this, I thought, I like this, but what I really wanted to do was actually etch the logos into the bone of the skull. And I didn't know how to do that. So I basically just, that idea went into a notebook of mine and sat in a stack of notebooks for over a decade. But more recently, I figured out how to do it. So where is it? So through the magic of 3D printing, I was able to make this. So
Wow.
yeah. So I not the full skeleton yet, but it's just something that I like. I like that I can have ideas and they can sit around in books for many, many years, and I can kind of come back to them at some point. And even though I spend my days and my nights and my weekends thinking about the stuff that we all think about, it's still in me somewhere, and it'll pop out at some random point. So a couple of parting thoughts, like what does this all mean? Damaris asked me about advice for your niece, I think. So here are some thoughts that I think are broadly relevant. One is that I think art is everywhere, like quite literally. I love museums. I love garbage dumpsters. I've dumpster dived to find stuff. I think if you look, you can find art in both. And sometimes the art in the dumpsters is better than the art in the museums. Inspiration is where you find it. This is a corollary of the first principle. Since art is everywhere, I think inspiration can really be found anywhere if we take the time to look. And we're all so busy. I mean, I don't just mean us at DocGo. I mean like everybody in the world and plugged into our phones, and me too. So it's hard to take the time to stop and look, but I think that's where that's where inspiration can really be found. As an artist, community is really important. I spent about a decade making work by myself, and I was in my own bubble. But when I started to connect with these different groups of artists and share my work with them and hear what they were doing, it really accelerated my creative progress and my ability to show my work. And that was a bit of a revelation to me. Listening is a really important skill for a whole host of reasons. What I found in my work was that if I'd share my work with people, they'd comment on it, and some of the things I said didn't make any sense at the time, but some of the breakthroughs that I had were actually inspired by random comments that people made about my work. Like, I was showing them the photo of like, oh, you're gonna have a show one day. You should take a couple of pieces of this advertising and like give it out at the show, and that led to me taking 8-foot sections of wall back, or like someone liking the fact that a lot of the things I made had some kind of tear in them, so I wound up like tearing the work. So things like that, but these things don't make sense, but you keep toying with them and you get where you get. And and to that, creativity is a perpetual process. It's a perceptual process as well, but I think it's something to be embraced and explored. So if you think about the journey that I took you through for this work, it started as a photography series that led to a decollage series that led to a biblical narrative series, and when I started working with my hands on the construction sites, I'm like, oh wait, I don't just have to stop here, and I started going to my studio and making all kinds of sculpture. It's all connected, and I don't actually know where it's going to go next. I love all the things that I made, but I find the process of making them more enriching and rewarding. The journey has really been great. So, the stuff that I'm sharing are all outcomes of that process. And finally, advertising is our medium. And what I mean by that, there is my favorite author, David Foster Wallace, tragically took his own life and robbed the world of his brilliance. But he wrote some incredible books. One of them is Infinite Jest. I have a copy in my office. It's like this thick. And it's a really dense read, but it's absolutely brilliant. He captured the zeitgeist today and like the fascination we have with culture. He tells a story in the book about a a pair of young fish that are swimming around in a pond under a lily pad. And an old fish comes swimming by and says to the two young fish, how's the water? And they look at each other, they turn back to him and say, what the fuck is water? And the fish just kind of swims away. So I think advertising is the water that we're in. You know, we don't see it. You know, we filter it out because we see thousands and thousands of messages every single day, and I make some of them. But you know, I think it's important that we think about that and you know, be more conscious of the messages that surround us. I hope this has provided some valuable context for that. And I just want to thank you for your time. If you want to see my work, you can come to my office. I've got some there. You can check out my website. Did I jump over that? Oh, that's my website. It's my name. And if you have any questions, I'm all ears. No questions? You don't have to have them, but...
I'd like to hold the skull. Whoever has the skull. It's here. Okay.
Well, all right, that's a wrap. Thank you. Have some wine, have some food, and thank you all for coming down and coming out.